In this video, I'm going to break down my process for mixing live strings, but before we get started, my name is Ed, you're watching Stokes Sounds, and if you like this video, please make sure that you hit the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment, and if you want to support the channel, head over to our website, stokessounds.com. Now let's dive in. I've got a track here by an artist called Finn Pearson, and the song is Devils for Witches, and it's like a country tune, and he got live strings in, so let's just take a listen to the actual full mix with the live strings in, and then I'll solo the strings so you can hear what the strings are actually doing.
If wishes were horses, beggars might ride. Devils for witches trying to get by. Wide-eyed, hold fire, relying on life to hand them dimes. If you're fixing for changing, then don't get lost. Red dirt back road, tail light does. You know in time you have to go a little down that line. 'Cause only if you saddle up and ride. Greener pastures come with bluer skies. Whoa, oh, oh.
Now let's just solo the strings on their own. They are amazing. Shout out Ned Moss, who recorded these strings and played them. Honestly, really, really good work. And, you know, having live strings in a production and being able to mix live strings is honestly just incredible, because I do always feel like it makes the track kind of sound warmer and it just makes everything just sound nice and kind of organic. So I love that. Now, if we look at the actual mix of them, individually, you can see that he's kind of done the whole arrangement. There's harmonies, there's kind of two parts to the strings. You've got the main kind of sustained part, and then you've got like the licks, the riffs of those string parts, which are really nice as well. But on each of the individual strings, I've got a Pro Q3, and I'm just taking out some low end, some rumble that I just know that is not needed in the actual whole mix of everything, because if I have too much rumble, it's going to muddy up the mix and it's not going to sound nice. So with these kind of live strings, I just wanted to take out all that kind of bottom end that just wasn't needed. And then I just did some overall very subtle kind of compression on each of the individual tracks. And that's just because I know that Ned didn't track with any compression. And so I just wanted to control the dynamics individually of the stem. So if you just solo the first two of the sets of the strings, you'll see what the compression is doing. It's hardly touching it. As you can see, it's just kind of taming the transients and just making it a little bit more leveled for me, so when I then process everything as a group together, you know, the dynamics are not crazy. So let's take a look at the processing on the string bus. The first plugin I got is the FabFilter Pro Q3, and I'm just using this just to kind of shape all of the strings as one. As you saw, that I took all of the low end out, all the rumble, all the kind of up to 100 hertz, everything that I didn't need on the individual string parts, and then as a group I felt like there was a collective of a little bit more bottom end that was added, because, you know, the more you add, the more things increase over the frequency spectrum. And so I just felt like I wanted to tame a few frequencies and just cut a little bit more low end out just to make space for them in the mix. So if we take a listen to the individual parts of what these are actually doing. So you can see it's just taking out some nasty frequencies that I just felt like that was not needed in the mix. And, you know, this is of course in context with the actual other parts of the track as well. So, you know, I'm not soloing when I'm doing this EQ, I'm playing with all the other parts in, but these were the frequencies that I felt that were not needed. So if we listen to the strings with it on and then with it off, you'll see what the EQ is doing. You can see it's not doing too much, but it's just kind of taming some frequencies that I just felt like that was not really needed in the mix. And then the next plugin I've got is the Spectral Shaper by Ozone, and I'm using this as just a multi-band, and that's between 2.37k and 9.5k, and that's just kind of taming the frequencies where the vocals are, because I felt like in the mix the vocals and the strings were kind of fighting each other for their parts, and I wanted the string to sit just a little bit behind the vocal so it wasn't kind of making the vocal kind of sound messy, and I wanted to have more definition in the vocal. So by putting this kind of Spectral Shaper on, it just allowed me to control that a little bit more, and I'm probably only doing around 2 or 3 dB. Let's take a listen to what it is that it's actually doing. Now let's solo the band so you can hear this is the frequencies that it's kind of attacking. You can see it's not very pleasant on the ear, it's not really needed, and it's, like I say, it's where the vocal sits, and it was just hurting my ear, so it just made me, you know, enable me to control that a little bit more. So if we listen with this plugin on and then with it off, you'll hear what it's doing. Again, it's very, very subtle, but like I say, small moves go a long way in a mix. And then next up, I've got one of my favorite plugins, which I use all the time, and you've probably seen me use it across all of the mixes that I've been demonstrating, and that is the Waves Factory Spectre. I absolutely love this plugin. It's basically an EQ, but with saturation. And I just felt like, because I'd taken a lot of the low end out of the strings and a lot of the rumble, I just felt like I wanted to kind of thicken up the strings a little bit more and just beef them kind of up. And around the 466 hertz mark, so usually around 400 or 500, the mid-range, I just did a little bit of a boost, and it just kind of brought the strings forward, but the frequencies that I liked forward, and that's why I did all the subtractive stuff before this plugin, because I didn't want to boost the frequencies that I didn't like. So here it's just a nice boost around 400 hertz. If we just take a listen with this on and then with it off, you'll hear what it's doing. Again, it's just ever so slightly just thickening it up, and to me it's just making it sound just a bit fuller and a bit nicer to the ear, and so that's why I did that. And then I go into some compression, and I like to keep strings very kind of dynamic, so I'm not doing too much compression. I'm just using the Fairchild 670, very popular to use on strings, and it sounds great, and so I used it. But you'll probably see I'm doing max 2 or 3 dB, and that's just because, especially when it comes down to orchestral kind of instruments and strings, you know, you want to have that emotion, you want to keep the dynamic. So if I compress the hell out of it, it's going to just kind of ruin all of that live feel in the mix. So let's take a listen to the compressor and let's see how much gain reduction I'm actually doing, and you'll be surprised, it's hardly anything. So you saw there, it's literally just 1 dB, and you might be thinking, well, why am I even bothering doing it? And, you know, one, it is doing 1 dB, and again, doing very small things goes a long way. And secondly, I like the harmonic saturation that this compressor is bringing. You know, people use different compressors for different kind of sounds, and I know that the Fairchild sounds great on strings, and I really like the character it brings out. And so even if I'm, you know, not even doing any gain reduction, so I'm not actually compressing at all, I'm still having the sound of those strings going through this compressor plugin, and I like it. So it's not always about how much you're doing with the plugin, it could also just be what color you're adding with the plugin, and in this case I just felt like I liked the color that it was adding. But let's take a listen with this on and then with it off, and you'll hear what it's doing. To me, it has a little bit more mid-range when it's on. So, you know, it's similar to what I was doing with the Spectre. It's giving that kind of mid-range boost on the strings, which I really like. So, you know, I went with it. Then the next plugin I've got is the Pro MB, which is FabFilter again. And again, I'm just doing a little bit more multiband, a bit like the Spectral Shaper. But this time I just wanted to add another multiband just after the compressor, just to control some of the frequencies ever so slightly. So if we take a listen to what this is doing. So to me, it's just leveling out, and this would have been something I would have added kind of near the end of the mix, and it would have just been if I felt like, you know, in certain parts of the string arrangement, there was a little bit too much, let's say between 2 and 10k. This multiband here after the compressor last in the chain is just controlling it. It's just kind of adding that last bit of kind of embellishment, I guess is the word, to the string. So I'm still getting that kind of bright sound that I want, but when it hits a certain threshold, it just ducks it a little bit. So it's just another way of just massaging the strings and controlling it in the mix, which is why I did this. And it's always a really good way using multiband to not kind of kill things with taking things out on EQ, because sometimes if you take the life out of something with EQ, it just either sounds really thin or it just sounds a bit wrong in the mix, where multiband allows you to keep a lot of the frequency spectrum of what you're, you know, of the instrument in the mix, but just on certain parts, it can just, you know, massage it in. So it's a really, really great tool for that. And then after that, we've got a little bit of string reverb. If we just take a look at my instrument effects bus, and the reverb I'm using is the Slate Digital VerbSuit Classics, and that is just a Hall. Just looks like it's the FG480, so pretty standard. And I'm just doing some filtering on it and some imaging again, just because the strings were quite spread and I wanted the reverb to kind of match that. So I just kind of widened the strings reverb as well. So if we take a listen to the strings with the reverb increased, you'll hear what the reverb is doing. You can hear the reverb is just adding that room, that space, and I just wanted it, again, very subtle. I don't like using too much reverb because it can, again, muddy up the mix, but just a little bit goes a long way. So that was the reverb on the strings. I didn't use any delay or anything, just reverb, just to keep it very organic. And as you can see, I've also done a ton of automation on the strings, and you know, the strings were recorded with its natural dynamics, but with the actual mix itself and with all the other instruments in, I just felt like there were some places where the strings were too loud or too quiet and I wanted it to build. So I just went through and I just did some manual automation, and I just did it with feel. Everything is done with feel, so you know, until it feels right, that's kind of when I'm happy. So that's, you know, what I did with the automation. So if we take a listen to the, you know, the chorus again with the track with all of the strings in, and you can hear that the strings here go up and down in volume in context with the music. Let's take a listen.
If wishes were horses, beggars might ride. Devils for witches trying to get by. Wide-eyed, hold fire, relying on life to hand them dimes. If you're fixing for changing, then don't get lost. Red dirt back road, tail light dust. You know in time you have to go a little down that line. 'Cause only if you saddle up and ride, greener pastures come with bluer skies. Whoa, oh, oh.
And as you heard there, the string automation is following the arrangement that's given with the strings. You know, when Ned recorded the strings, you know, he was actually doing the strings kind of early on in the production, so the full track wasn't fully finished yet when I did the final mix. And so, you know, Ned's given me his kind of dynamic of way he would play strings, but then I have to put that dynamics that he's done and fit it in context with what the actual strings are going to be played in. And so that's why there's automation on the main string bus. And again, that's just so things don't get lost or unheard, or when he's doing a riff, or maybe it's not the word riff in the orchestral world, or, you know, when he's doing like a fiddle part, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but when he's doing that, you know, sometimes I want to hear that kind of poke through, and you had the acoustic guitar and that was kind of poking through at certain points. So it's all kind of push and pull and making things kind of just fit really nice and tight in the arrangement. And that's it from me this week. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video of my approach to mixing strings. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and if you've got any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll check them out, and I'll see you all again next week for another video.